Good morning. So this review is for the Barsoom project by Larry Niven and Stephen Barnes. This is a second in the Dream Park series, and if you can zoom in, please. You probably can't, but right at the top there's a little Dream Park flag to make it obvious. Pretty good cover. Not 100% book related, but still pretty cool and enjoyable. Okay, so the Barsoom Project, as I said, second Dream Park novel. There's 4 in the series. I would strongly recommend against reading the Barsoom Project if you haven't already read Dream Park. I think there's too many things set up in that original one. But that said, the Dream Park series and the Barsoom Project in particular aren't going to be for everyone out there. So, first of all, I'm going to read something from the afterword that I think it's Larry Niven wrote. Yeah, Larry Niven wrote this in 1989 for this book. This was an ambitious project. Dream Park was fantasy wrapped in science fiction, wrapped in mystery. The Barsoom Project is cut from the same pattern. And it is cut from the same pattern. You still have a game running inside one of the Dream Park stadiums, auditoriums, rooms, not sure, one of those things. And this one is called the Fimbulwinter game, and the Fimbulwinter is apparently based on some mythological construct, which I haven't read up on, probably should have before doing a review on it. And yes, so you've got the fantasy and the science fiction and the mystery. And I think that's what makes Dream Park so attractive to the people to whom it is attractive, because the fantasy is that the players of the game are in a fantasy world and they're basically role-playing. It's a role-playing game, RPG type game, kind of think Dungeons and Dragons. So you've got wizards and you've got witches and you've got warriors and you've got dwarves. You've got all that sort of thing. But the fantasy has been created by the science fiction, which is Dream Park. Dream Park is a world far in the future, which has got such extensive virtual reality and technology that it can create a essentially totally believable environment in which to play the fantasy game. And the mystery is lodged in both, because it has to do with things that are happening in the Dream Park which affect the game. And I'm going to go into all that a little bit. I'm not going to do any spoilers in this review. It doesn't really call for spoilers to explain what's happening, and the slow unveiling of what happens and who's actually responsible is, I'm going to say, almost incidental to the enjoyment. If you enjoy it, definitely not for everyone. I went online to check that this was actually the second in the series. I thought it was, I wasn't sure. Not everyone loves these books, and I think it's for a very niche type of reader. Ideally a reader who has done role-playing or knows about role-playing or enjoys reading about role-playing, but they have to have the technology element as well. And I said that in my review for the original Dream Park book last year. If you don't like the tech, you're not going to enjoy this book. But if you don't have that link to the fantasy genre, you're also probably not going to love this book. And it is very much cracked for role players, and Larry Niven in his afterword also describes meeting a real life role playing guild, fantasy playing guild I think it's called, that arose after they wrote Dream Park. Okay, so going into the Barsoom project with all of that in mind, and the fact that I really loved Dream Park, I loved it the first time I read it, loved it this time as well. I had read the Barsoom Project before, and I went into it remembering that I was a little bit disappointed back when I read it in, I'm going to say, probably the 90s. I didn't like it as much as Dream Park, and in my head I was comparing it to Dream Park. This was useful knowledge to take in reading this book, because I've got to say the beginning isn't good. And if you go online and check all the people who really didn't like it, DNF'd it, 1 star, 2 stars, I think most of those problems, about 90% of them, go through to the beginning. Now we start with the prologue. And the prologue is a great hook. We're inside a game. The gamers have reached the final stage. They're fighting in the Fimbulwinter game. So again, it's winter. You've got all this fantasy stuff happening in the snow. The great winter, the Fimbulwinter, when carbon dioxide freezes, is approaching. And we see it from this particular character's point of view. Evian, I think her name is. And she's doing her warrior thing, and it's all great. And she picks up a gun, and she fires at one of combatants, and she thinks, oh, that's even more believable than usual. And that prologue is the hook. It's great. Unfortunately, the next thing that Niven and Barnes do to you is you are in the current day, which is about 7 years after the first Dream Park, and I assume about the same length of time after the event in the prologue. And that is really not great. This is where the tech seeps in, and apparently some people love the tech. The Barsoom project is an innovative, futuristic plan to create a skyhook around Mars, populate Mars. We understand that there's already people in orbit. One of the characters in this is actually the Moon Maid, and one of the delegations to this presentation are from either orbit or the Moon. I think it must be the Moon because they call her the Moon Maid, but you know, doesn't go into that. What it does go into, in abundant detail, is how one whole hall of Dream Park has been created to sell the Barsoom project, with the terraforming and the machinery and the skyhooks, which once they're perfected on Mars can then be transferred to Earth. There's an awful lot of tech, and I got lost. There was a lot of tech. It didn't seem to have any real relevance to the project or at hand for me, which was the game. It didn't really seem to have anything to do with the whole Dream Park scenario. Now, I think this was a very poor writing decision. If Niven and Barnes wanted to write the Barsoom project, that would be an excellent thing for a book, but they invested about 3 chapters on this. And the tiny tasters to the fact that there was actually going to be a game eventually weren't enough to keep you invested in what was basically an expo, a professional expo for Barsoom project that I read them, but I didn't love them. And I will say that it took me 2 tries. The first time I picked up this book, loved the prologue, got bogged down in chapter 1, put it down, read something else, came back to it, slogged my way through those 3 chapters. That's not what you want to do when you're creating a book. You don't want those 3 chapters to be annoying and boring for the reader. They were. And I can't blame anyone who hasn't read Dream Park and loved it for leaving at that stage, and I can't really blame anyone who did love Dream Park for leaving at that stage. So, in hindsight, you can see that the authors were trying to set up the whole economic reason for Barsoom project, how important it is to Dream Park, how important it is for the future of humanity to go to the stars. You can see that. And the thing I liked about Dream Park and Barsoom project is that it's very upfront about how are we making all these miracles. Well, money talks at the end. Things like this aren't going to happen unless there's an economic reason. So I like that, but they didn't do it well. Okay, so but as part of the Barsoom project presentation, it presented to one of the players in the game. She is called something that I have since forgotten, Charlene, and her father is part of some spacey project. Now, she's come to play a game, and the game in question is running the Fimbulwinter game again, after all these years, but they're running it with a difference. So the first game that we played, any gamer could sign themselves up, pay the money, play the game. Point system, there's a national, I gather it's a national gaming society that awards points to certain characters, and characters can come in with those points, grow their points in certain ways. So the gaming is playing for something. In the Fimbulwinter, however, it's a different type of game. And before we get to the game, there were too many threads and there were too many characters. The game itself, when it finally starts, like chapter 5 or 6 or something, whatever, was a good game. A little bit less of a mystery thriller than the first one, but it still has its elements. There's a couple of characters from the first book that we introduced to early on. Oliver the Frank and Gwen, his wife, who were playing in the Dream Park, the first game in the Dream Park book, their South Seas adventure, come back here, but they're coming in as guides, so they're actually employees who are helping guide the group through. Which is good, because we are given virtually no character development. I forgot for pages at a time that Oliver was there at all. Gwen was fairly pivotal, but we're not really given anything on her, and not very much on any of the other characters as well. So that's a problem that I'll mention here. Right at the end, in the last 2 or 3 chapters, there were 2 characters that when their names came up, I'd still go, I know they're there, but I've got no idea who they are. I still have no idea who they are. I managed to read this whole book, which mostly centers around this game, and at the end of it, I was still oblivious to this Johnny Walsh guy, and there was some other one, something beginning with Y. I've got no idea who any of these people are after 337 pages. That's not great writing, I've got to say. But a few of the main characters, yes, you know them. So one of them is Evian. And how has she got back into this game when the psychological profiles are so important? Well, she's come in as the VIP guest of this lady Charlene from the Stars. They've been playing games online for a while, and they've come to do this real live role-playing game. They're LARPing. We've got Gwenny and Oliver. We've got these 2. There's another couple of women, or is there one other woman? There's a few women, there's a few men. 2 of them are brothers. Because we have, after the prologue, but before the actual game starts, somewhere around about here, I guess, we have another little mini game, a day game that a few people are in. Evian is in, and that it manages to introduce us to the fact that she is completely and utterly cray-cray. Her psychological profile has obviously been warped, presumably by the thing that happened in the prologue, so that she is incapable of really differentiating between real life and a game. How did she escape through the psychological profiling? Well, that VIP pass I mentioned a minute ago. So we're set up to know that she is an unstable character who will be odd. And we also introduced to the 2 guys as well. Maybe 3 guys. Skinny guy. The skinny guy, I say that because that is a character development. Okay, so we've got all these people. Next thing we know, we skip rather fast into the actual game. They're all getting aboard an aeroplane. It's all in a hurry. There's flesh-eating zombies, or there's something coming up behind them. This is the last plane to escape San Francisco, and it's heading to Alaska because all the southern airports are no longer accepting refugees. The great winter of the future is settling in rather fast, as it happens. And one person on board, a character called Bowles, Robin, maybe, has got a refuge for them up in Alaska. They're heading there when they have a crash. After the crash, they meet up with a tribe of Eskimos. Okay, so stop right there. Written in the 90s. I know we don't use the Eskimo word anymore. The E word is a bad word. We say Inuit. And in actual fact, while for a lot of people reading this, that might be on the slidey, politically correct scale, in the afterword, Niven actually talks about this. So he was ahead of the time in making it quite clear that Eskimos are mostly known as Inuits. They obviously did a lot of research on the culture. They talk about how the Inuit is not so much a people as a series of tribes all the way around the Arctic Circle. And he talks a lot about all the ways in which they research that the cultures in order to build a believable mythology in this book. And actually their research must have been absolutely fascinating. And a lot of respect to them for doing it so well as they did, because once you're inside the book, ignoring the fact that they use the E word that you're not supposed to use, you've got a really good shamanistic culture. And I can't say if it reflects any particular part of the Inuit cultures, but it's good. So our gamers meet this tribe of modern day, I'm going to just say Inuit because it's 2024 now. And they're a good combination of modern and not modern. So the main guide for the game is Gwen. Dream Park has essentially given her virtual reality suit so that she looks the part. Her father, her game father, is a shaman of the tribe, and they talk about how this winter has been created by a group of bad Inuits who are grasping for power. They've imprisoned Raven, who created the world, and they have done horrible things to Sedua, who is the ocean queen, embodiment of, anthropomorphic personification, not sure, mythological figure of the ocean. Loved Sedua, by the way. Ocean, of course I do. So that's the game. The name of the game, as well as the Fimbulwinter, is a style known as Fat Ripper. And this is where a lot of online hate comes in. And in modern ears, it's a bit icky, and I'd forgotten it. So I got icked a bit. This game isn't a game which players are playing for points, for fun. There's fun there. But the idea is that most of the people in there have eating issues, and a couple of them have substance issues. And this game is being very carefully designed and is being very carefully moderated by the Dream Park psychologist, Dr. Vale, to reprogram their bad habits to do with food, which is why I called Kevin the skinny one. So we've got one young guy with anorexia. You've got a lot of people who are overweight for various reasons. You've got one or two substance abusers. And I, at first, when they said the Fat Ripper, I'm going, whoa, 90s, but still. As it evolved, I actually think that they're doing something really interesting with the idea of using a total immersion game to reprogram substance issues, whether it's food or any other substance, whether it's eating too much or eating too little or whatever. And I think that they did a good job of that, but I do think that it's gonna read a bit strange to a lot of modern sensibilities. You have to read with the knowledge. This was written about 20 years ago, and the sensibilities were different. So some of the phrases, the E word, the F word, etc., are going to be an issue for some people, and I don't blame them at all. But if you've lived through the 90s and 80s and 90s, and you know that what they were like, nowhere near as sensitive as the 2024s and 5s, I think you will still enjoy this book with warnings. Okay, so that's enough about the Fat Ripper, because while it's written into the game, it's something we know about, and we get little hints here about how Dr. Vale is reprogramming certain things, about how he's reaffirming body type and body image and other things like that. So you can see that, but they're scattered throughout the game. They aren't heavy-handed. Now, the gamers have to save the world from the Fimbulwinter. It's great, and I did love the game time. The game time was good. The readers figure out early that the woman from the prologue is back under in the game under the same player name as she had in the prologue. But she doesn't know who her actual birth name is. She mutters something with the name at one point, and someone goes, "Oh, who is so-and-so?" And she's got no idea. The people she's playing with very soon start going, "Wow, she really takes the game seriously. She stays in character all the time." And then a bit later, one or two of them go, "Never seen her out of character. Does she know it's a character?" And we, as the readers, are privileged to see it from her point of view. And initially, she doesn't. She has a go at someone who calls it a game because it's not a game. And when two different alternative paths are offered to the gamers, someone says, I think such and such sounds like more fun. And she goes, it's not fun to kill people. And he goes, ugh. Okay, backing away slowly from the crazy lady. So there's that. It's a complicated plot. Now, for a large part of the game, Alex Griffith, the security guy that we know from the first Dream Park, is in the back of things realizing that there's something wrong with the Barsoom project, that there's something wrong with the game. Eventually they figure out that this woman is back in the game, and they figure that out when she gets killed out of a game that isn't meant to have kill-outs. Hang on, there's bird problems. Are you a bird problem? Say hello, mastermind of birdness. Okay, so where was I? Oh yes, Alex Griffith, behind the scenes. He's really worried about the Barsoom project presentation. And then this added element creeps in. And I'm not going to tell you what he does about it, because really the best thing about this book is the game. The gaming is fun. The ending wraps up well. So after our damaged person from the prologue dies, which she isn't meant to be able to do, she's reinserted into the game, and the game sort of takes on its own reality. And that is one of the things that, in terms of an adventure and a thriller, keeps it fun for us, the readers, because it goes off script. And once we know it's gone off script, we don't really know how it'll end up, because the people who are running the game don't really know how it'll end up. They're just playing it by ear. Around about the time the game starts to reach towards its conclusion, which is a great conclusion, really like the ending fight scenes, really like the ending concepts. Around about that time, your game time that you're reading about narrows down, and the security outside time amps up. And it was pretty good. The mystery thriller part of it ends with the bad guy being defeated. Once they find out who the bad guy is, a major part of the mystery plot is figuring out who the bad guy is and what he wants. I don't think we ever really figure out what he wants, but we do figure out who he is. The characters that we have come to know and love all reach their end of the game. Some of them have attained what they were after, which is a reprogramming. Some of them may not. So we've got this moment at the end where our guide and their guide, Gwen, who's been with us all the way through, wanders around with Dr. Val, and they're sort of thinking about the success of the game. That epilogue, was it epilogue or last chapter or something, would have been a lot more evocative if I could remember who the characters were. It was nice to know about the ones I did know, but there was still 2 or 3 at the end there where I'm going, I'm not sure who this guy is. Don't really know. Anyhow, overall, it's a good book. I think elements of it, like the actual gaming in the Fimbul Winter and the Inuit culture, will stay with me a lot. Other elements, not so much, and I probably would be ready to reread that in 2 or 3 years if I ran out of other books to read or reread, unlikely as that seems. So do I recommend the Dream Park? Yes, I still love the first Dream Park, and I think the Barsoom project, if you can yawn and stretch your way through the first few chapters, is well worth it for the game that they're playing. I do recommend it. I did enjoy it. Now, there's 2 more in this series, I believe, and I don't own either of them. If I came across them in the wild, I would definitely find them, and I would definitely read them. I probably wouldn't go so far as buying things online looking for them specially, but I would be interested. Another thing that's said in the epilogue by Niven is that they didn't write this in a hurry. They didn't go into this in a hurry after Dream Park, even though there's a lot of interest and a lot of people wanted them to. They took their time and waited to write it till they had a story to tell. And I think certainly the game part of it was a good story to tell. As for the rest, I don't know how fast they went into the next two. I hopefully one day in my life I will come across them somewhere and I will buy them, read them, find out, and then I will let you know. In the links below, I'm going to link to the Dream Park review I did last year, if I can remember to. I hope I can remember to. And in the meantime, thank you for watching. Read good books. Maybe even read Dream Park. And if you've read Dream Park and liked it, maybe even read the Barsoom Project. But definitely don't read it if you haven't read Dream Park. Thanks for watching. Like, comment, subscribe. Do algorithmy things if you feel like it. Otherwise, go away and read good books.